Well, the project that I'm involved in is called MyFIRE. It's funded within the FIRE programme of FP7. The major part of that is looking at internet experimentation. So MyFIRE as a project really has two strands. One part of it is trying to standardise the way that internet testbeds work, and the second element is to collaborate with partners in the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, to look at the scope for collaboration between them and Europe.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we're very much involved in the project as the tame social scientists. Most of the other people have far more technical focus on what's going on. And probably the main social issue is about the professionalisation of these test facilities. They're mostly funded by research projects. Somebody gets a piece of equipment to use for experimentation. So they use them for their own experimentation, but then when the money runs out, the people leave and there's no sustainability of it. Whereas people look across the Atlantic to the United States, where there's this far more dynamic sort of coexistence of the test beds with universities spinning off new businesses. So part of what we're doing is to try and understand, well, how could the management of these test beds be changed to make them more sustainable? Stakeholders, but the main stakeholders are the people who run these test beds, and also the users of the test beds, the people who are leaving university who want to use these test beds to try out their ideas and lead on to spin-out companies. So I think if we're trying to justify our work, we'd say they are the primary stakeholders. I know far too much about the digital agenda, because it now forms a framework for the European Union's priorities in these areas. When we're looking at developing proposals for follow-on calls under FP7 of the European Union, you basically have to shoehorn, sort of adjust what it is that you would like to do to frame it in terms of those priorities. The key one of those priorities for us is interoperability. At the core of most of our work in this area, we're looking at the processes of standardisation. How do the test beds standardise themselves? But even when we're looking at other internet technologies, we're interested in how do you, as we discussed earlier, how do you avoid ending up with lots of competing proprietary technologies? How do you make sure that there is a sort of standardised technology that maximises the network effects of having a standardised technology? Well, there is an assumption when the project was set up that if the people who ran these test beds could be made aware of how to operate them successfully, they would look forward to a wonderful future of great success, and it would lead to lots of wonderful new spin-out companies and European innovation. But there is an issue about the fact that the European landscape is so different to the United States that, irrespective almost of how much education that the operators are provided with and how much it's pointed out to them the sorts of business models they should be following, how much it's pointed out to them that they should actually professionalise what they're doing, that they should standardise and document the processes that they're following, it might not be that the way that these things develop is the way that initially we were hoping that we would be able to facilitate. So then the main element is to say, how do we develop a view of these models, the standards that are required, and then make sure that the people who operate the test beds are at least aware of them. And because it's so many free countries in Europe, in each of these countries, that people can decide whether they're going to adopt them or not.
And you were asking about in general before. Would you like to answer that question in general?
That's an even harder question, because that leads on to the question that's always been running through today about the split, and very much related to this particular event, that about whether there is a gap between the technology. Over here we have the technology, lots of people developing lots of nice pieces of software and things that do things, and then there is this thing that's somewhat sitting outside and sort of throwing things over the fence, which is the socio-economic analysis of the technology, which in some way is going to move it slightly this way or move it slightly that way. whereas almost philosophically, from our more sociological perspective, we would tend to argue that there is no dichotomy between technology and society, that you can't imagine a technology that doesn't have any society, and it's very, very hard to imagine a society that doesn't have any technology.